I would also like to now to change gears a little bit and to ask you some questions about the tremendous leadership experience that you have. So we already talked about earlier in this episode how you've been working at Merck KGaA, Darmstadt, Germany since 1989. And in that 3.5 decades, you've grown through the organization. We already talked about that journey a little bit earlier on. The electronics part of the company that you lead that has 8,000 employees, that used to be called performance materials. Do you want to tell us about that transition, what led to it, and what the challenges were? Maybe there's lessons that we can all learn from that kind of transition that you made at your company.
That is a very interesting part of the company's history. In the late 60s and the 70s, the company started, and very smart researchers found out about the properties of liquid crystals in modulating light. So this is where all the technology advancements for flat panel displays came from, initially from our work in the late 60s and 70s with the first calculators or watches being based on liquid crystals. And it was such a phenomenal work. It took decades to generate commercial products out of that, which then has led to all the flat panel displays. We had 80% market share for all the liquid crystal materials in its peak during its peak seasons in the 2005, 6 to 10, when all the TVs were replaced by flat panel displays. So we developed an enormous experience in display materials as well as understanding our electronics customer and in this area. The unfortunate part of that is every of these enormous innovations has a life cycle. They start slow, they ramp nicely, and then they plateau, and then it's getting really difficult. And the question is, how can you switch gears once you were so enormously successful in those days to find something else? And that something else was, how could we apply the same way of improving our customers' products' performance in a different domain, using as much of what we learned or in the display arena. This is where we entered the semiconductor world in 2014. Basically, it's just about 10 years ago, and then we started venturing into adjacencies from our display experience into semiconductor. And in semiconductor, that was an opportunity which got bigger and bigger the more we dealt with it. And this is where we acquired then quite a number of companies, from AZ Materials, where it all started from, to Sigma Aldrich, the high-tech business. A part of our Sigma Aldrich acquisition was focused on semiconductors, to Versum Materials, to Intermolecular, to M Chemicals, and a number of companies acquired to form a market-leading portfolio around semiconductor technologies based on this deep chemistry history, legacy that our company has. We drive chemistry for 3.5 centuries, and understanding quality challenges since the middle of the 19th century was the first industry's quality promise that was given to customers already in 1850. So there's such a deep legacy, and we kind of conquered a new market with semiconductors, and this was like perfect fit going forward, since chemistry was needed, physics were needed, microelectronics needed, and all this together has formed a business which is now called the electronics sector.
It's pretty wild to think how 350 years ago this company was founded, and there's no way. I mean, they would never ever imagine the kinds of innovations that 350 years later you would be doing as a company and the capabilities that would be allowing. It's wild to think that, when you think back 350 years ago, what were the leading technologies of the day? Like a horse and buggy. Whereas that, it's wild.
Yeah, probably was even more severe. 1668, the year when our company was founded, that was shortly after the 30 Years' War in Europe ended, devastating war. And of course, healthcare was probably the most important need in order to improve people's lives. And this is where it all started. And then scaling from there into how can we support other pharmacies, not just our own? How can we support other companies in the 19th century and make other companies successful? This is why we call ourselves in the electronics sector the company behind the companies, advancing digital living. So we pride ourselves that we help our customers to drive the latest and greatest innovations, not only in the industry, one could say in the world right now. So this is how it all comes together. And to your point, innovating an existing company is far more complicated than driving innovations out of a startup of a new company. Typically, you are in your own way whenever you drive innovation within an existing company. Typically, you believe what I did yesterday probably is successful tomorrow as well, which is probably the most fatal mistake you can do in business.